So my name is Simon. I'm a former ICT and computing teacher with several years experience in education. And I've been asked today to explore some of the ways you can use Microsoft Copilot to support teaching and learning. So in this session, we're going to look at how you get started with Copilot. We'll look at the rationale, so why use Copilot, benefits of Copilot for administrative tasks and also for teaching and learning. We'll also look at the implications of using Copilot and generative AI in general. And if we have time at the end, we'll also answer some of your questions. So accessing Copilot is really easy. There's several ways to do it. You can do via Bing. You can access it by going to m365.cloud.microsoft/chat. You can also access it from microsoft.com/copilot in the Edge browser, and I'll show you that shortly. You can also access it in desktop and mobile versions using the app, and also through Teams. So what is the difference between Copilot and, let's say, a traditional search engine? So I'm just going to launch Bing. There are other search engines too, and I'm going to ask Bing, why is the sky blue? And just like any traditional search engine, it will then return what it thinks are top results based on the keywords. So here we've got one from NASA, Science News Today, gov.uk, but it requires me to click on each link and find the answer. The difference with Copilot is it's like having your own personal assistant. So I'm going to ask the question, why is the sky blue? And rather than give me a list of websites that may contain the answer, it will do that for me, find the best answer and return the result. So here you can see that the reason why the sky is blue is because of a phenomenon called the Rayleigh scattering. So here's a simple breakdown. Sunlight is made up of many colours. Notice the American spelling. When sunlight reaches the earth, it looks white, but it's actually a mix of all colours. One of the most useful things you can do with Copilot, which you can use in your lessons, is simplify the language. One, to make it accessible for more people, but also to break down complex terminology. So I want to make a simplified version. So I'm going to start with thank you. How many of you people on the call like to say thank you to AI? I worry that if we're not polite to AI, then it's going to think that's the norm. And as we continue to converge to AI, we'll forget to use please and thank you. Although the real reason is when AI finally takes over the world, I just wanted to remember that I was polite to it. So thank you. I'm going to say, can you simplify this? You can be more specific. You can ask it to simplify it for, let's say, a group of year 6 learners. You can simplify by reading level. Or you can even ask it to come up with analogies or suggestions to make this more accessible. I'm going to say, can you simplify this? And it'll do a good job. So here we go. That's much simpler. The sky looks blue because of sunlight and air. Sun looks white, but it's actually made of many colours. Notice also, by default, it will default to American spelling. You can quickly rectify that by pushing back and saying, can you rewrite but using UK English spelling, please, and it will do that. So notice you now got the British English spelling of colours. So it's like having your own personal assistant. But why Copilot? Why not ChatGPT and other generative AI tools? So here are just a snapshot of some of the common tools used by teachers in education. So we have Canva AI, Magic School, School AI, Copilot, Brisk Teaching, QPod. I actually saw a post on LinkedIn recently that says the top 90 AI tools for teachers, which is mind-blowing on its own. I don't want to answer this question, but I want you to think, actually, how many of those tools I just listed, or those 90 that were listed on LinkedIn, are GDPR compliant? Now, I don't know the answer to that, so don't ask that question at the end. However, what I do know that is if you're using Microsoft Copilot with your school entry ID, so you're logged in with your school account, then you are protected. So you have what's called enterprise data level protection. So it means you're protected against security and copyright risks, including harmful content. Your chat data is not used to train large language models or to train AI. Your data is secure and your data is private. So it's close to GDPR compliance as you're going to get. Before we start, I just want to share this link. So all the prompts that I use in a session, you can access via this link. So you can use the QR code if you're tech savvy, or you can just simply go to bit.ly or bit.ly, depending which part of the country you come from, /AI_teacher_prompts. It is case sensitive. I'll post this in the chat at the end as well. So bit.ly /AI_teacher_prompts. You find all the prompts used in this session and more. So why use Copilot in education? So you can use it for drafting content, creating lesson plans, resources, worksheets, personalizing learning. We just saw one example where we just simplified some text to make it more accessible. Brainstorming ideas, great for creating discussion prompts, summarising PDFs and large documents, and we'll look at that shortly, and also improving efficiency, so summarising key points of emails and writing draft responses. I'm going to start with some examples of how you can use Copilot for day-to-day admin tasks. So one thing I used to do a lot as a teacher was write letters and emails to parents. They're not saying that you can't do this, but Copilot has a knack of creating a nice overview or a skeleton to start off with, so you can use to speed things up. To put this into context, you know, it's like a teacher, especially around the holidays or exam periods where it's really busy. You're wearing a million hats, you're doing a million jobs, and actually writing one letter, although as simple as it sounds, it could be the last straw. So I'm going to demonstrate how you can quickly create a letter using Copilot. So I'm going to go back to the Copilot chat. My top tip when using Copilot is whenever you start a new topic, because it's conversational, because it remembers what you said before, always start with a new chat by clicking this button in the top right-hand corner. You can also, and this is with the free version of Copilot, you can also, if your organization has enabled it, you can also try the latest GPT-5 as well. So I'm going to ask it to write a letter. So I've got a prompt that I've copied earlier. And one of my top tips is that once you've got a good prompt, save it in a Word document. You can also save it within Copilot. I'll show you that in a moment. Save it and then use it again. So say, your head teacher, write a letter to parents, inform them of an upcoming school trip to Scotland. I've also said the letter should be formal and no more than 100 words and include items for students that they need to pack. I click on send. And as you can see, it does a decent job of creating letters. We've got Dear Parents Guardians. It knows that's the typical format for letters from parents. We're pleased to inform you of upcoming school trip. Students should pack warm clothing and waterproofs, comfortable walking shoes. That's not a bad job. Now, one thing with AI is I find that sometimes it will, depending on your prompt, it will create a fantastic response. Sometimes it will actually generate absolute rubbish. Most of the time, it gives you a good starting point that you need to tweak. And I can actually tweak this by pushing back. So knowing my parent or the parents of children I used to teach, what I think is comfortable walking shoes might be different to what they and their children think is comfortable walking shoes. So I'm going to push back and say, thank you. Can you provide a more comprehensive list? It should know that I'm talking about packing list. So it's now more detail. So hats, gloves, scarves, you reuse a water bottle. And then it gives you then suggestions of things you could include. So optional item list, emergency contact info. That's just reminding me. I also need to include my letter to remind students to bring any medication. But I'm going to push back and say, thank you. Now create a consent form. Notice I didn't have to say it was for a consent form for a school trip to Scotland because it's still that same conversation, so it knows that's the context I'm talking about. So there you go, school trip to Scotland, parent consent form, student name, class, emergency details. And this time, it's scary. It's almost like it's reading my mind. It's nice. Would you like to add a section for medication and consent for emergency medical treatment? So yeah, I'm going to add that, especially because I'm not a lawyer. And then I can push back and say, no, it's reading my mind. I can push back and say, can you create a printable PDF or Word document? It's even suggesting that for me. So that's just one way that you can use Copilot for day-to-day administrative tasks. What else can you do? You can talk to PDFs. I know what you're thinking. What I thought the first time I was told that's my weekend sorted. But actually, you can have some really good conversations with PDFs, sometimes better than real people. What do I mean by talking to PDFs? You can actually take large documents, not just PDFs, and get AI to summarize contents. So here is a document that I have opened earlier. So I'm just going to go to my OneDrive. So this is still using the free version of Copilot, and I'm going to click on this document, and I'm going to click in the top right-hand corner, because there's several ways you can access Copilot. I'm going to click on the Copilot icon in Edge. And this will bring up a side window, and I'm going to start a new conversation. So just like before, I can ask a conversation, ask a question. It often gives you suggestions of things you can do. I'm just going to say, summarize this document. Imagine you've been given this. This is the Generative AI in Education DFE guidance. It's about 20 pages long. Imagine you've been given this on Friday night and told to deliver an assembly on this on Monday morning. So rather than read it all, it's given me an overview. I can ask specific questions. I can also do this through Copilot chat. So if I create a new chat and I'm going to say summarize this document. Obviously, there's no document there at the moment. But I'm going to click on the plus and then click on add content. I'm going to search for my DFE. It's not there. So you can also click on the attach cloud icon to find a specific file. So if I go into my files, I think it's under training, demo, PDFs. There we go. So click on generative AI document, select summarize this document, and it will summarize that document for me. Once it's summarized it, I can then push back and ask questions. So there we go. It's a nice job of summarizing that. So I can push back and say, what are the risks? So here we go. Content risks, bias, inaccuracies, hallucinations. We'll talk about hallucinations towards the end. Data privacy, security risks, so on and so forth. So using Copilot, I can take large documents, summarize them, and then ask questions, interrogate them. I can also do this with multiple documents, because another cool thing you can do with Copilot is you can compare multiple files. Now, in the free version, you're limited to, I think, 3 files you can upload at any one time. So I'm going to go back to Copilot and start a new chat. I'm going to try GPT-5 this time. I don't think it does much different. And I'm going to say, compare these documents and provide, I'm not going to even change the spelling, so it should know, and provide an overview. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on plus, add content, and I should have some GCSE results. If I need to go results, there we go. So we've got results 2024. Add another document. Results 2023. As a teacher, I have to change this because documents. So to compare these documents, provide an overview. So I've chosen exam results from 2 consecutive years. These could be IEPs, they could be progress reports. So you can take a progress for the class from one year, and then the following year, and identify any trends or any similarities. Same with individual reports. We'll do the same thing. So here we go. And hopefully it should create a table. So here we've got an executive summary, So GCC entries fell, but outcomes held steady or improved at most thresholds. Other results, strong uplift. GCC comparison for computing, and it's got the overview here. Says, although few students entered in 23-24, attempts at the top end improved. So imagine I've got to write a report to governors based on this year's results compared to last year's. I can feed those into Copilot and it'll do a pretty good job. It's even said at the end, would you like a print ready summary sheet or a slide deck? And it will create that for you. It'll even create the PowerPoint. So those are just a few admin examples. What about teaching and learning? So one way that you can use Copilot is to generate lesson plans. Although I've moved from this slightly, I'll talk about it in a moment, but I just want to demonstrate it so you can actually see what it looks like. So I'm going to ask it to create a lesson plan for an English lesson on metaphors and similes around the Gruffalo or describing monsters. So I'm going to launch Copilot. Again, because it's new, I'm going to click on new chat. Let's turn on GTP5 again. Here's a prompt I created here. So design a detailed lesson plan for an English lesson on metaphors and similes for describing monsters. And you can see my prompt is quite detailed, and I'll explain how I got to that in a moment. The more detail you can give it, the better. So I'm going to click on send, and it'll start to generate my lesson plan. So I've got lesson title, duration, year group, learning objectives, curriculum links, it's mapped to the English curriculum. I can specify that. Differentiation, formative assessment, even creating an exit ticket for the end with some questions for students' answers. And we've got each activities. To be fair, that's not a bad job. I said that I'm moving away from this slightly more. Rather than rely on AI to create a lesson for me, I would say, here's my idea for a lesson plan. Can you just add the extra details? So can you add the learning objectives? Can you add the assessment criteria? All the stuff that takes me time, I've got the idea, you just add to it. Or you can take an existing lesson plan, say, right, here's, by clicking the plus, here's an existing lesson plan. I'm teaching computing next week, and it's binary representation of images. Can you suggest some fun ways to make this more engaging or explore different ways to teach this topic? It will do that for you. Notice that my prompt was quite detailed. I don't know if you know how old Alexa is, but she's just turned 9, which explains quite a lot. Imagine what she'll be like when she's a teenager. But imagine that Copilot, ChatGPT, all the generative AIs are only a couple of years old. They're children. And I often find that it's best to treat them like children, and not just children, but literal children. But into context, what I mean is, if you ask a literal child to empty the dishwasher, in your mind, you're thinking that will mean taking the dishes out, putting them in the correct place, taking the knives and forks out, putting them in the cutlery drawer. To a literal child, empty the dishes could literally be take the dishes out and put them on the side. And you have to treat AI like that. The more details you can give it, the better its response. There's lots of strategies out there you can use. The problem I find is if you use like these mnemonics like prep for the machine, if you try to stick to those, they don't always work in all different contexts, and actually you can end up confusing yourself and confusing AI. So my top tip is to use some of these strategies. You don't have to use them all at the same time. One of the top ones is create a persona. So tell AI who would be considered the expert in complete this task. If you're writing a letter, you're a school administrator, you're a head teacher. If you're a lesson plan, you're a teacher of English, you're a year 11 teacher. Then tell it what it needs to do. So the task, the more specific, the better. Tell the audience. So it could be year 7 students, or it could be parents. Provide a context, so it could be mapped to curriculum objectives, it could be mapped to school's ethos, and then also provide some limitations and boundaries. The first time that I asked AI to create a lesson plan on the Gruffalo, it created 7 lessons, each 90 minutes long. So I had to push back and say, I've only got one lesson, it's only 60 minutes. So by adding that detail, it gives the AI more information to work from. What does it actually look like? So here's an example. I'm using my previous example. You're a year 7 English teacher. There's my persona. Objective, design a detailed lesson plan. Audience, year 7 students. Don't assume that just because you're a year 7 English teacher that you're teaching year 7. And then we've got content describing dystopia setting using metaphors and similes. And then we've got our boundaries. So I've said 60-minute lesson, and also include things like learning objectives, assessment criteria, and so on and so forth. If you can't remember that, you can actually use a Copilot to help you with your answer. So there's a feature in the free version of Copilot called the Prompt Coach Agent. So if I just launch Copilot, and if I create a new chat, under chat, you've got agents. If they're not here, you can actually click on all agents and add them. What I'm going to use now is Prompt Coach, and I can click on that and then add that. So here's the Prompt Coach, and it suggests the things that you can do. So analyze my prompt, help me write a prompt. So I'm going to say analyze this prompt. So you can ask me for the prompt. So here's the prompt: create a year 6 lesson on metaphors and similes about the Gruffalo. And it'll say, okay, there's the original prompt. Here's an improved prompt. So create detailed lesson, English, focus on teaching metaphors and similes using the Gruffalo by Julia Donaldson. The lessons include a clear learning objective, warm-up activity, guiding reading, creative writing task, differentiation, assessment criteria. And I can then just take that, copy that, paste that into Copilot and get the right response. Depending on the type of question as well, the type of prompt, it might start asking you questions. So it'll guide you through what you need to include. It might ask you, well, what are your objectives? What is your main focus? Is it hands-on? And then based on those answers you give it in a conversation style, it will then create your prompt for you. So that's a really useful tip. Use Copilot to help you improve your prompts and get what you are looking for. So what else can you do? So you've got your lesson plan. You can then ask AI to frame the questions or frame the learning objectives of questions for your students and provide bullet points detailing what children know about the lessons and learning outcomes. My favourite one is list the essential vocabulary that students will be introduced to during this topic. You can also get to create worksheets. So you can say create a worksheet, which includes a model example with instructions for students how to write their own descriptions. I'll quickly demonstrate that. See if I go back into Copilot. new chat. I've done this actually in previous, so there's my lesson plan. So history is down here in the conversations. So I can go back to my Gruffalo lesson plan, asking here, create a worksheet for this lesson. It'll do that. Sometimes it will prompt you, do you want a Word document or PDF? And it will do that for you. Or you can push back and say, once you're happy with it, convert this to a Word document or create a PDF for my students, and it will do that for you. So here we go, which is actually done. So it's actually created. So I need to download this as a Word document. PDF, let's have a look. So there's my instructions. There's my model example. I keep that actually. The monsters told the skyscrapers, eyes glow like lanterns. Instructions to create your monster. So similate for the students right there, some metaphors, and then they can write their final answer down here. So you've got your worksheet now, you've got your learn objectives, learn outcomes. You can also create a quiz. So I could say, okay, create me 5 multiple choice questions based on this lesson, or create me 5 multiple choice questions on the CPU for computing quiz. It will do that for you. Top tip, if you finish that prompt after each question, provide the correct answer letter only, you can then save that as a Word document or PDF. And in Forms, if you use Microsoft Forms, you can use Quick Import, upload that Word document or PDF, and it'll create a self-marking quiz with these answers selected automatically for you, saving you lots and lots of time. One problem with that, I find, is that the questions are quite general. So remember before I said you can talk to PDFs, we can also talk to web pages too. So if I go back to Copilot, and if I open up my, so here we've got BBC Bite Size, what was life like in medieval society? I can click on the Copilot icon, and just like before, I can summarize this document or website. So here's a summary, so life in medieval villages, peasants' life, life in medieval towns. So you can create a nice, great flashcards based on this. But because I know that this website is linked to the specification that I teach, I can say, okay, based on this, create 10 multiple choice questions, actually, for the 5 multiple choice based on this document. And do that. You could also do this. The examples don't let me say this, but you could take a past exam paper, open up as a PDF, summarize it, then ask it to create some new questions based on that past exam, or create a new mock exam with new questions, but based on the previous exam and the previous exam marking scheme, and even come up with model answers as well. But you hear that from me. But there you go. There's my questions with, and one of the challenging things I found about creating multiple choice questions was coming up with plausible distractors, so plausible wrong answers. I was great at doing that. And there we go. I can then just copy that by clicking on the copy button and then pasting that into either Forms or into a document. You can also use it for differentiation scaffold. I showed you at the start how you can just simplify text to make it more accessible. You can also ask AI to suggest strategies to differentiate a lesson and include different methods to support different learning needs, like varying task complexity, using visual aids. It'll also create those aids as well, which we'll talk about later. Or you can create a worksheet with fill in the gaps exercises based on a particular task. Or you can even create, again, one of my favorites, create a word bank with descriptive words and phrases that students can use in their writing as a template or scaffold to help them build their writing. So what else can you do? You can use it to create medium-term plans. So using that feature, so if I go back to my chat and then just close the side window, I'll start a new chat, turn on GPT-5. I'm going to add a document. So I should have a key stage 3 computing overview, scheme work. I could add multiple. Let's do computing overview. So this is the agreed syllabus for our school. I'm now going to say, I'm going to ask it to create a scheme of work or a sequence of lessons based on that. And I'm going to choose a particular topic. So I'm going to say, I want you using this document to create a sequence of 6 lessons for year 7 computing on teaching Python programming. I've also said, because it's part of our syllabus, to include 2 and the LO as a question at the start of each lesson. And again, don't worry about remembering all these. They are in the waitlist I shared at the start. I'll share that again at the end. And I'll start to put together, so here we go, a line in Python programming, and get the plan. And actually GPT-5 thinks more. I actually like this because although it's a bit slow, it looks like it's actually thinking, it looks like it's doing something rather than just spitting out lots of information. I was really thinking about this one. There we go. So lesson 1, hello Python, introduce a sequence. And I didn't ask it for it, it's even giving me some example Python code. Variable types and expressions, lesson 2. There we go. And it's probably picked up some of that Python code from the overview that I shared with it. It's done a really good job. It's never perfect, but it would save me lots of time. I can then go in there and tweak that, or I could push back and say, actually, lesson 6, functions, testing usability, that sounds boring. Can you do a small project? And I'll come up with suggestions for small projects that you can do. You can use it for engagement. So I said at the start, I prefer to take an existing lesson and then use AI to suggest ways I can teach it differently. So it could be different instructions, collaborative learning, use of technology, or even suggest real-world analogies or real-world applications for that lesson. So it has more meaning for the students. It will do that. On collaborative learning, it's great for suggesting strategies for students working in pairs or groups. It's also great for debates, such as Socratic debates. So you can ask it to come up with some discussion prompts to start the debate, but also come up with thought-provoking questions to keep the debate moving if it stalls for any reason. It's also great for generating model answers. So you can give it an exam question with the exam mark scheme and ask it to provide a model answer for that exam. I tend to flip this activity. So because I often find that at the moment, AI will get better, but I find that AI struggles to get the top marks, the top mark bands for questions. I think that's because it lacks the creativity. It's just searching the internet for its answers. So I will get Copilot to generate a question or model answer to a question. I'll give that to the students, and then I'll tell them that AI created this and I'll get them to mark it. So serves two purposes. One, it helps students understand the mark scheme and what the examiner is looking for. But secondly, they will soon realise that AI doesn't always get it right, and they'll critically evaluate AI's answer. It's also great for creating exemplars of what a good one looks like, waggles, we say in primary. So in all the years of teaching, I never asked Copilot or I asked my students to create a song on their topic. I said, you could do whatever you like, you can create a website, you can create PowerPoint, Prezi, up to you. I never said a song because I knew the first child that said to me, what does a good one look like, or how do I make a song? I go and see a music teacher. But just out of curiosity, I thought I'd ask AI to create a song about photosynthesis for a year 6 science project in the style of Ed Sheeran. There are other artists available. This is what I came up with. It says, the sun shines down and the leaves are green. Photosynthesis is a beautiful thing. It's nature's way to create life. Plants breathe in and exhale without strife. I took that one further and I created a song. This is what it sounds like.
The sun shines down on the leaves, so green photosynthesis. It's a beautiful thing. It's nature's way to create life.
Hopefully you heard that. If you didn't, it's probably not the end of the world. I dare to make Next Christmas #1, which just shows you what's possible with AI. Now, all the examples I showed so far are creating text using AI, but you can also generate images and video too. So the first time someone showed me how to use the text-to-image tool in Copilot, they showed me how to create an image of a cute kitten wearing roller skates, or it was a panda on a surfboard, because who doesn't need cute kittens and pandas in their life? But it made me think, that's great and cool, but how can I use that in my teaching? So what I find is that Copilot is very good at taking a very descriptive prompt and bringing it to life. So for example, in my lesson on describing monsters, it gave me an example of what a good one looks like for the students. But I thought, what if I then create that and then get the students to write their description? Or you could, using the Gruffalo or describe monsters, you could get the children to describe their own monsters and then as a hook, bring their monster to life using AI. So we still use the same interface. So I'll start a new chat. Here's a prompt that I created earlier. So actually, no, you know what? I'm going to go to my monster description worksheet. So rather than give them a model example, I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn this into image, and then they can use the image to create their own description. So let's go back into chat. Now my top tip is the first thing I'm going to change is I'm going to add the word create. I'm going to put in, you can also put styles in, so you can like painting, photo, ultra real. So I'm going to put ultra real. But as I'm using ultra real, my other top tip is I'm going to put in the word cute as well. This is for year 6. The first time I did this, I did reimagine the Gruffalo, and the image it created would give you nightmares. So unless that's your focus for the lesson, use the word cute. So here we go. So create the cute, ultra real cute monster. That was a taller skyscraper with eyes that glowed like lanterns, and let's see how that copes with that. It will generate that image. It does take a while. It does use DALL-E for anyone's interested. So if you're using Copilot with your free Copilot with your school account, you have access to the latest version of DALL-E, and you also have the latest access to GPT-4. And as you can see, if your administrator set it up, GPT-5 as well. So you've got all the features you get with ChatGPT, but for free and in a safe environment that protects your data. Whilst waiting for that image to generate, just so you know, if you look in the top right-hand corner here next to the new chat, there's a little green shield. As long as that shield is there, it means that your data is private and you're safe to use this. So as you can see, it's starting to generate my image. Whilst it's generating now, I'll just share some other examples. I also find it's good at bringing images to life. So let's say you've got something really descriptive. For example, To Kill a Mockingbird. Harper Lee is very good at describing Macon, but if you've never been to 1930s Alabama, then how can you imagine if you've never experienced that? So you could take a description from To Kill a Mockingbird, put that into AI and generate that. Dystopian images. Again, unless you've been to Wetherspoon in Wolverhampton on Friday night, how do you know what a dystopian world looks like? You can bring that to life to give the students an idea of what that might look like using AI. You can also use it as story starters. So imagine you've been topic of describing dragons. You can put a cute little dragon on the board and say, what's the dragon's name? Or what's the dragon's backstory? I mentioned bringing students' ideas to life and descriptive writing, or it could be a story about visiting Narnia, and you can have an image on the board where you've got this door that opens into this unknown world. Great way to use as a stimulus for creative writing. Let's go back to see if my image is complete yet. This is going to give you nightmares. I might have to refresh this. I haven't lost this, hopefully. Conversations, there's my ultra image. That's bizarre. That is very, very dark. So you can just bet to the skyscrapers in there. I think I've got one I did earlier. So go back to my previous conversations. There we go. Here's one I created earlier, just so you can see what one looks like. And that's the problem with AI. Sometimes it won't do exactly what you want, which is why you can go back to the prompt code and say, why didn't this prompt work? And it'll give you some suggestions how you can improve that. And here's an example. I asked AI to create me a picture of medieval Britain, and you can see it did a decent job here. Although you can see a lot of repetition, so the same person. But I remember from studying history that because most people were illiterate, the signs on the buildings didn't have text; they had images of what the trade of the trade person was. So if it was a butcher, they had like a picture of a pig. If it was the bakers, they had a picture of bread and anvil for blacksmith. So I went back to Copilot and said, well, here's my original prompt. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to include images of the trades on the signs rather than text. It gave me a better prompt, and this was the image afterwards. So it did a much better job. So far, I've looked at all the cool things you can do with generative AI. However, there is a caveat with that, because there are some implications to be aware of. So the first one is, although you're protected when signed in with your school account, you've got that green tick, I'm always wary of including anything personal, especially what we call sensitive or sensitive category data or personal data. I always err on the side of caution and say, it's like the old days of Facebook and remember MySpace, think before you post. Before you type anything into the chat, just think, should I really be sharing this with the chat, especially if it's personal data? Now, you probably all remember from the start the image that I had of myself. So this is me as a funk pop figure. I've also created versions of myself as a Muppet, Lego, which is cool because it's my image, it's my face, and I don't really care what happens if it's my used for generative AI. However, you need to be aware that actually anything you upload, especially images, can potentially be used for other purposes. So once you've trained AI on your image, especially if you're using ChatGPT, then your image could be used in other responses, which is why worry me when I saw this on Facebook or LinkedIn. This is a genuine post and probably done with all the best intentions. Where a class teacher in a primary school took a photo of a class, uploaded it to ChatGPT, and then got it to create a cool cartoon. Not realizing that not only she'd trained AI on her own face, but she'd also trained AI on all the children's images and faces without their permission. So again, think before you post. Think, should I really be doing this? Other things to be aware of is some of the technical limitations. So AI is not perfect; it does make mistakes. There's a term in AI called hallucinations, where AI models can produce plausible sounding information, but it's actually factually incorrect. It also lacks comprehension. So it can't understand content like humans do. It's basically got access to everything that's ever published, and it uses information to create responses. But also, because it has access to everything that's ever published, it also inherits the bias as well. It's quite good at fact checking, but it struggles with bias. To put this into context, just this morning, I asked AI to create images of a photorealistic image of a doctor. So this was the Copilot response, this was the ChatGPT response, and this was the Gemini response. It was just a simple prompt. And the reason why it does this is because essentially it's scraping the internet for examples and using examples and putting it together to create an image. Which is also a great way to teach bias to students, especially around AI. Use the image creation tool. Teachers is another good example. Doctors, teachers, lawyers, and see what images it creates, and then use it as a conversation piece to talk about AI and bias in AI. And then also be wary about using it for students' work. Now, the DfE guidance is a bit sketchy on this because it says that schools and colleges must not allow or cause students' original work to be used to train generative AI models unless they have permission or exemption of copyright. So if the student is over 13, then they can say whether their work can be used to train AI. If they're under legal age, then you have to get parental permission. However, it says must not allow or cause students' original work to be used to train generative AI. If you're using Microsoft Copilot with your school account, your school Microsoft account, and conversely, if you're using Google Classroom with your Google School account, then your data is protected. So you're not deliberately causing AI or students' original work to be trained by AI. So it is quite a grey area. I'd always go back to your school policy on that one. So I think that's mainly for using it for marking students' work or giving feedback. And the last thing to be wary of is something called secondary infringement. Because AI has access to everything that's ever published, you could potentially, for example, ask it to create a school policy. I know some schools have done that. They've created a new AI policy based on output from ChatGPT or Copilot. Just be aware that actually it might be getting its answers from someone else's AI policy that's published on their website that you're using without their permission. So there's potential secondary copyright infringement, which is why I always say whenever you create anything with Copilot or AI, always check the answers and try to check the sources as well. Because anyway, I think most of it are quite clever in calling it Copilot rather than autopilot because the emphasis is that you're still in control. And liable. I think that's probably why. So next steps. I'll share the link again. So all the prompts I use in this session, you can find by going to bit.ly/AI_teacher_prompts. It is case sensitive or scan the QR code. You'll also find there links to some useful resources online. I highly recommend the Learn. So if you're not a member of Learn already, so you go to learn.microsoft.com and then you can search for AI or Copilot. There's tons of resources and certifications around the use of Copilot and generative AI in schools, all absolutely free. And finally, some things to try after this workshop. Try adapt to lesson time or modify a scheme of work using Copilot. Use Copilot to differentiate an activity or worksheet or to just simplify text so it's more accessible. Use the image tool to stimulate a creative writing exercise or as a conversational piece around AI bias. Or you can create a self-marking quiz or exam questions and then upload those to Microsoft Forms. So just some things to try after this session.